Friday night. It's not late night. It's 9 o'clock. It's bedtime stories. Hi, friends. So I'm going to wait until a couple of people come on and just finish my Riesling. Just having a little wine on a Friday night. And I'm going to whine a little because we're at the end of this book and I'm sad about it. It's a really good book. I enjoyed reading it. It's weird not having interaction. I'm used to like a class full of people chatting it up, and that's not what happens here. But it's cool because I'm getting feedback after the fact that y'all are listening and that you're enjoying it. And some of you are even saying it's helping you get to bed at night. So that's what I'm here for, bedtime stories. And I can't use glass in my house because I have animals. And they knock things down. Ellie, you want to say hello? You want to say hello, beautiful? Do you? No? Okay. You're just going to like try to see what's in my cup or something. Yeah, she's checking to see what's in the cup. Yeah, see? Look. What's in it? Okay, so hello, and I hope you're having a wonderful evening. I'm about to finish the last 2 chapters, and let's just recall Freak the Mighty. We have little Kevin, the kid who rides on top. He is Freak, and he's in the hospital. He had some kind of seizure. He also has a trach in his throat so he can breathe. And he just said in the chapter before that he's getting his new bionic body and that he's not coming home until that happens. And he gives his best friend now, he gives Max the journal and says, write the adventures of Freak the Mighty. And Max is like, I can't write. I don't write, right? And he's like, you have to, I'm too busy. So chapter 24 is called The Return of the Kicker. Now, I always get real comfy right before I'm going to read, and this is even in a class full of students, if I were in a classroom, in a high school or whatever, in a university. Get comfortable before you start reading. Minimize your distractions. Do all those basics, and then everything else will fall into place. So chapter 24 is called The Return of the Kicker. And if I remember correctly, Freak was a kicker in preschool and Max was a kicker. They were both kickers. Like that's how they noticed each other, I believe. So here we go. The last 2 chapters. The deal is I'm not supposed to bother anybody at the hospital. Yeah, right. Like me being there is going to screw things up. The way everybody is acting around here, you're supposed to shut up and not do anything but wait, which makes me crazy. So early the next morning, when Grim is still snoring loud enough to rattle the window panes, I get up and sneak out of the house. The way I figure, I can check on Freak and be back in time for breakfast. No harm done. It doesn't work out like that, to say the least. The sun is just coming over the mill pond, and there's this spooky mist on the water. You can hear all the frogs making a racket under the lily pads, and the mosquitoes sound like bullets whizzing by. And I kind of have to slap and run until I get clear of that smelly old pond. Hi, friends. Moving fast, like the sun is chasing my heels, I'm running down this long, faint shadow stretches out ahead. You can't ever catch up with it. I'm thinking with my feet, like the rest of me is still asleep. Not that I'm completely alone. There's this one old guy. He's actually out cutting his lawn. He's got these headlights rigged up on his rider mower, and he's wearing pajamas too. Like it's normal. Everybody does it. And in my classroom, I always used to stop and talk about this lady when I was a child who used to mow her lawn in the bikini. And all the men in the neighborhood would be like, oh, I guess it's time to mow the lawn because she was out mowing the lawn. Ew. Yeah. So he's in his pajamas on the lawnmower. When I get to the hospital, the street lights are just starting to click off. The lobby is empty and there's nobody at the desk to tell me I can't be visiting patients at the crack of dawn. There are plenty of nurses in the ICU, though, and they see me coming. This one woman runs right out from behind the telemetry station, and she's got her hands up to her mouth, and I'm pretty sure she's trying to shush me, even though I'm not making any noise. She's not telling me to be quiet, though. She's saying, "Oh my God, you must be Maxwell," even though she's never seen me before in her life. I go, "Is Kevin back yet?" Oh dear, she says. "Is he going to be okay?" Oh dear, she says. Oh dear. Now more nurses are coming out of the ICU. One of them is the one I accidentally bumped into yesterday, and when she sees me, she goes, "Better page Dr. Spivak. Kevin was her patient." Did you hear the important word? Was. And usually I hear an audible gasp in the classroom, which I can't hear you right now, and you're not reading it really with me. You're just kind of listening, but oh no. That's when I noticed that some of the nurses are crying and looking at me strange, and all of a sudden I just go nuts. I'm saying, "No way, no way." And this nurse is trying to throw a hug on me, and I push her away. And then I'm running down the hall, and it's like I'm the kicker again, ready to just blast anybody who dares touch me. And I have to keep running. I'm skidding around the corners and bumping into walls, and no one can touch me, even if they're brave enough to try. I just keep running and running until I get to these glass doors that say medical research. The doors are locked and it's dark inside. So this is the place that Kevin kept telling him, "Oh, that's where they're going to give me a bionic body." So Kevin was kind of making things up, just like the way he slays dragons and it has an imagination, right? He was doing that, and Kevin didn't really, and Max really didn't get it. So he goes to the place where he thinks he'll find him, the medical research building. The doors are locked and it's dark inside. Behind me, people are shouting to call the guards, and I punch my hand right through the glass, and I'm inside, skidding over the broken glass through the dark, and I keep going until I come to this other set of doors. No admittance. No glass this time. They're solid, so I can't punch through, and I'm kicking and slamming into the doors, and that's when all the hospital cops catch up with me. A bunch of them jump on me, and I keep going, running around in circles like an accident of nature until finally there are so many of them on me I can't stand up anymore. They're putting handcuffs on my wrists and my ankles, and they're sitting on me and going, "We'll have to medicate him." And this one cop says, "With what? An elephant gun?" That's how Dr. Spivak finds me, covered with cops. She's this worried face leaning down. Her eyes are red and blurry, and she's saying, "I'm sorry, Maxwell. We did our best. Better let me bandage up that hand. You're bleeding." "He believed you," I say. "He said you said you could give him a new body, and he believed you." "What are you talking about?" "The special operation," I say, "the bionics unit." Dr. Spivak makes the cops let me up and says she'll be responsible, but they leave the handcuffs on me just in case. And the cop who was talking about needing an elephant gun has his nightstick out, and he's ready to bop me if I make a move. Dr. Spivak sighs and says, "Somebody get me a coffee, please." And then she looks at me and goes, "You better tell me all about it." So while she's bandaging up my hand, I tell her about how Freak has been coming to the medical research lab every few months to get fitted for his new bionic body. And Dr. Spivak's face goes soft, and she nods to herself and says, "Well, that explains it." "It was all a lie, wasn't it?" I say. "You were just telling him that so he wouldn't be scared." "You know better than that, Maxwell. You couldn't lie to Kevin. I tried a little fib on him when he was about 7 years old because I didn't think a child could handle the whole truth. And you know what he did? He looked his disease up in the medical dictionary. I want to pause for a moment and just say, I don't know exactly what condition Kevin had, but if it's an upper respiratory, you don't make it that far in life problem. Maybe it was cystic fibrosis, and unfortunately, we are still in terminal stages with that disease. So she tried to lie when he was 7 and say, hey, I looked it up in the medical dictionary. So that's when I know she's telling the truth. Freak and his dictionary. Kevin knew from a very young age that he wasn't going to have a very long life, she says. He knew it was just a matter of time. So he was lying about getting a robot body? Dr. Spivak is shaking her head. I don't think it was a lie, Maxwell, do you? I think he needed something to hope for, and so he invented this rather remarkable fantasy you describe. Everybody needs something to hope for. Don't call it a lie. Kevin wasn't a liar. No, I say, but what happened to him really? I could tell you all the medical terminology, she says, but what finally happened is his heart just got too big for his body. So that explanation doesn't go along with cystic fibrosis, but I don't know the diagnosis. Maybe someone's a medical expert. They can help me. Okay, there was talk about arresting me for busting up the hospital. The cop with the nightstick was in favor, but finally they released me into the custody of Grimm. On the way home, he goes, do you want to talk about it? Just leave me alone, I say. You've got it, he says. That's the first time I ever read that chapter and didn't cry. And then as I was reading the parts that usually make me cry, I realized, you know what? You've had so much more trauma in your life since you've last read this that it didn't register the way it used to register. Because like the worst thing that could possibly happen to us has happened. Like we lost my kid, like now I'll cry. Like my kids lost their dad, So, so like I just used to think like, what is it when you lose a child? And then I was like, oh my gosh, my friend lost her child recently. And I can't even imagine. Okay, hold please. Is there any Riesling left? There's just like a sip. Hold on. Sorry, am I allowed to drink wine while I do this? There are some children watching. I apologize, children. I'm safe in bed at home with my dogs and my cats. And my children are at home. So we're going to finish the last chapter. Okay. So I was like, oh my God, you made it through the chapter and you didn't cry, Dawn. Like I've read this book 100 times out loud, and in my class every year I cry. And I'm like, you made it through and you didn't cry. And then of course I did anyway somehow. I don't even know. This is it. 2 more pages. The last chapter is just tiny little 2 pages. And it's called What Loretta Said. So Loretta is Loretta Lee. That was a year ago. So now it's been a year since he got the journal, since Freak died, and here we are now a year later. I hid in the down under for days and days and kept the door closed, which is why I missed the funeral and the Fair Gwen going away. Graham told me about it afterwards, how she couldn't stand to live in the house with Kevin gone, and who could blame her. Grimm threatened to unscrew my bedroom door, but he never did. He just kept saying I should come out for Graham's sake. And sometimes she'd come down and say I should come up for Grimm's sake, and so on and so forth, until finally I gave up and came out. I don't know, but this is making me sad because my kids have all had depression. Like not the little ones so much, but the big ones. And like when someone doesn't feel well, you can't force them. You have to like just be there for them. And so instead of like saying, you have to come out, snap out of it, what's wrong with you? It's like, they're just like kind of using guilt, and guilt isn't that bad of a thing to use to manipulate people, believe it or not. Shame is horrible. Blame is terrible. But guilt is actually kind of a healthy way to get people to do what you want. And so Graham and Grimm were playing and I play that game with my kids. Like I offer the thing that they would want to do most. Like, do you want to go here? Do Do you want to see that person? So they got him out. And then he says, I don't know if this makes sense, but for a long time, I felt like I was a balloon and somebody had let the air out of me. I didn't care if I ever got the air back, because what does it really matter if we're all going to die in the end? That's how I was feeling, and sorry for myself. Grimm tried to tell me it isn't how long you've got that matters. It's what you do with the time you have. But that sounded so lame and puny next to Freak dying that I just didn't want to hear it. This one day, just before school was supposed to start, I was moping around the backyard and thinking again how pointless and stupid everything was. And Grimm comes over and says, you know what? Most of us go all the way through life and we never have a friend like Kevin. So maybe you should count yourself lucky. Yeah, right, I say. Suits yourself, he says. But let's get one thing straight. You're going back to school if I have to hitch a rope to the bumper and drag you there. Is that clear? I've had that kind of conversation in my house with my kids. Like, I know it sucks. I don't want to get out of bed sometimes either. Like, we're all a little scared and frightened in the beginning, right? But like, I had those speeches like, you will get your butt out of bed and get to school, you know? And then I'd be like, whew, and I got them there. Like, oh, thank God. You know, like I needed my break. But he's like, I will tie a rope around you and drag you there, basically. Is that clear? So I went and I hated every minute of it. And I especially hated how people kept feeling sorry for me as if it was me who died. Finally, one time, even Tony D, remember Tony D, the bully? Even Tony D came up to me and said it was a shame what happened. And I could see that he really meant it. And I just blew up and told him if he ever felt sorry for me again, I'd put him head first in the mill pond and pound him into the mud like a fence post. So we're enemies again, which is just the way I like it. Not too long after that, this was winter by then, I saw Loretta Lee in the street. She had on the neck brace and you could smell booze on her breath. But what did you expect? A miracle just because she lost her head and acted good for a couple of minutes? Anyhow, Loretta sees me and says, did you hear about Gwen? She's in California and she's got a new boyfriend. His name is Rick and they're crazy about each other. Ain't that good news? I guess so. Take it from me, she says. It is. So what are you doing these days? Nothing. She gives me this long look and she goes, nothing is a drag, kid. Think about it. I thought about it all the way home. That night I pulled my pyramid box from under the bed and I got the empty book out of the pyramid and I'm thinking, who are you kidding, Maxwell Kane? You haven't got a brain. And that's the truth, the whole truth, and the unvanquished truth of how Freak would say it. So I wrote the unvanquished truth stuff down and then kept on going for months and months until it was spring again and the world was really, truly green all over. By the time we got here, which I guess would be the end, I'm feeling okay about remembering things. And now that I've written a book, who knows? I might even read a few. No big deal. So the dummy ends up writing the whole book. And what book did he write? This book. And if you remember when I started, I said, this is a lot like Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. If you're paying attention, he's telling you stuff that already happened in the first person point of view, which when we get in the first person point of view, we get to know all the thoughts and feelings of the main character. And that is why we sometimes cry when we're reading, because we're feeling what the characters are thinking and feeling. So thank you for joining me with this little book. I will pick another book and many different books, short ones, long ones. You can tell me, you can suggest anytime you want a book, and I will consider it. And I hope you guys have a wonderful night and sweet dreams. I will see you next week. Ciao.